The Legend of Zelda. Arguably one of the best video game franchises of all time. Often praised for its controls, music, graphics, and gameplay. Speaking of graphics, I would like to talk about two particular games in the series, The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. These games, in a way, kind of rivaled each other in the past. One was meant to be a fresh take on the series, while the other took a rather serious approach. Interestingly, these two games polarized the fans of the series, and if it wasn't for The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess would have never existed. Before we touch upon the subject, let's go back to the year 2000. At this point in time, the Nintendo 64 was at the end of its cycle, and already had two critically acclaimed Zelda titles in its library of games, Ocarina of Time and its direct sequel, Majora's Mask. Later in that same year, Nintendo was heavily promoting the successor to the N64, codenamed Project Dolphin, later known as the GameCube. Of course, during this time at Space World 2000, Nintendo showed off many tech demos for upcoming games, including an early demo for The Legend of Zelda which involved an epic sword battle between Link and Ganondorf, which got many fans hyped, including myself. However, the following year Nintendo decided to take a different approach to the Zelda series, and during the E3 event in 2001, they released a new tech demo which was vastly different than the previous one. This was the first tech demo of The Wind Waker. Instead of focusing on realistic-looking graphics, they focused on a cel-shaded art style and cartoony visuals. The initial reaction to the demo itself was polarizing. Some liked it, others were disappointed by it. Shigeru Miyamoto was surprised at the reaction to the footage, and the media's claimed that Nintendo was shifting its focus to a younger audience when he said that he wanted to extend Zelda's reach to all ages. After this happened, he refused to reveal anything further until a playable demonstration became available, hoping that once critics played the game, they would focus on the gameplay rather than just reacting to the new graphic style. Miyamoto promised a playable version for E3 2002 and the game's release later on. Now, what was the reason behind this polarizing tech demo? Well, this part is more opinion-based, so if you agree to this or not, that's your call. You see, most fans believed in the idea that better graphics meant better games, though that concept varies and isn't always the case. This generation of gaming, with the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 gaining terrain in the market, there was a strong demand for realistic-looking graphics and gameplay. We had titles like Capcom's Devil May Cry, Ubisoft's Prince of Persia, and EA's take on Lord of the Rings. They excited consumers and were praised for its realistic visuals and hack-and-slash adventure gameplay. The North American market mainly preferred realistic games over artistic visuals, thus spoiling gamers that praised realism above anything else, a movement that continues to this day. On another note, fans of the Zelda series expected a true sequel to the last two games, and fans wanted to see their hero grow up with them over the years. Fans expected the first tech demo version to be the final product, yet they were disappointed over the Wind Waker version, expecting more realism instead. But as we've learned over the years, true continuations of Zelda games they happen, but few and far in between, since Zelda games took huge twists and turns chronologically, and over the years, it developed a confusing timeline which was eventually cleared up much later. Aside from that, some Xbox and PlayStation owners I knew over the years were constantly snubbing this cartoony Zelda game, calling it childish, and preferring darker, grittier, and even gorier adventure games. Some critics went as far as calling this version Powerpuff-like, because of its cartoony comparison to the Powerpuff Girls, which is very odd. The GameCube's toyish design didn't help either, which is another reason why Nintendo was stuck in third place in this generation's console wars. Things got really aggressive. The Wind Waker started off as a controversial game, but this later paid off when critics started praising the gameplay and controls in E3 2002, and was later released worldwide in 2003 with critical acclaim. Despite its visuals, it was still a Zelda game at heart. However, sales were kinda sluggish in the market, according to AG Onuma. So despite Nintendo's drastic attempts to appeal to a general audience, they had no choice but to fulfill demands for a realistic Zelda title later on. This is the reason why Twilight Princess started development, shortly after Four Swords Adventures, but that's another story. Originally developed as Wind Waker 2, it was given a drastic change, being darker and more serious, and was brought up at E3 2004 to thunderous applause. with Miyamoto showing off with sword and shield in hand and discussing the new title that was going to be released for the GameCube. Fans described this as a spiritual successor to Ocarina of Time. Now, during the Tokyo Game Show in 2005, Nintendo was introducing their new console codenamed Revolution, later becoming the Wii. The console introduced wireless motion controls and left Zelda fans slightly confused because there was some uncertainty about the next Zelda title either being a GameCube exclusive or a Wii exclusive. In order to satisfy demands, the game was released on both consoles. Interestingly enough, the Wii was confirmed to be backwards compatible with the GameCube games too, so you kinda wonder. Anyway, though both versions are essentially the same story, the Wii version had different controls and gameplay compared to the GameCube's control, and the game was completely mirrored, mostly for right-handed players, despite the fact that Link used to be traditionally left-handed. This game was also critically acclaimed, and also a commercial success, though in retrospect, Twilight Princess interestingly became a product of its time, while The Wind Waker eventually grew on fans through word of mouth and even spawned 2 sequels on the DS using the same visual style, Phantom Hourglass and later on Spirit Tracks. In the long run, The Wind Waker had developed a bigger fan following, and it was even given an enhanced remake on the Wii U, while Twilight Princess has been mostly ignored, with the exception of Link's crossbow training and the references in Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U. In a situation like this one, it makes you wonder if realism matters or not in a Zelda game. 15 years ago, it was all about the graphics and realism. Now gamers and critics of this generation are slightly more open-minded and accepting when it comes to showing off a new visual art style. When Skyward Sword was announced, its visuals became a hybrid of both styles. As a Zelda fan, I have grown to enjoy all games in the franchise. They're all unique in their own way. No game is truly perfect, and everyone has different opinions about which Zelda game is the best. What matters here is that Nintendo is never afraid of taking risks. Despite the rivalry that existed between these 2 titles, I'm glad to own both of them due to their historical significance. In conclusion, fans should just enjoy The Legend of Zelda for what it is, an adventure. This is Hadouken Dude, thanks for watching.